Have you ever found a repetitive task you're doing on your computer and thought to yourself, man, I wish I could automate this? Maybe it's like you have to type in a certain thing and press some keys and you're just doing it over and over. You got to move your mouse here and click and then move your mouse there and click. And you just do the same repetitive task over and over. And you're like, man, this is no fun. How could I automate this? Well, one way to automate these type of tasks is to use the USB libraries that are built in with the Arduino IDE. They're the keyboard and mouse libraries. These are super easy to use libraries. They're really handy for automating these simple repetitive tasks that you might find yourself doing from time to time on your computer. In this lesson, we're going to cover using the keyboard library. In the next lesson, we'll be covering using the mouse library. We're going to go through every single function in these libraries. Spoiler alert, two of the functions, which are in the documentation, don't actually have any code written in them, so they don't work at all, which, if you didn't know, would really screw you up. We'll also be talking about what kind of Arduino boards you need for these libraries to work, and also a really important caution when writing code for these libraries and a super easy way to stay clear of any trouble. This is going to be super fun, and you're going to walk away understanding how to implement this in the Arduino IDE. Stay tuned. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get more videos like this. All right, let's jump right into this. Let's start by getting clear on what type of hardware you need in order to use the keyboard and mouse libraries with your Arduino. So you need to use an Arduino board that is based on the 32U4 or the CMD based boards. So that's going to be a Leonardo, an Esplora, a Zero, a Duo, or any of the Maker family Arduino boards. Now I think the Esplora has been retired, but these other ones, I'm pretty sure they're making them all. Right now, for this example, I'll be using the Leonardo. These type of boards allow the Arduino to act as a native USB device. So when you plug it in, your computer is going to recognize something as like a mouse or something as a keyboard or something that's going to, act as like an input device essentially. All right, so those are the types of boards you need. Now, I also mentioned that the mouse and keyboard libraries come pre-installed with the Arduino, and they do. But unlike the serial library, for example, you actually have to use the include statements in order for them to work. So that would look something like this. Once you've included these two libraries like so, you get all of the functions inside of these libraries to be able to use in your sketch for free. That's pretty cool. Now, if typing that out is too much for you, because I know, man, it takes a lot of work to type that out, you can actually go up to Sketch, Include Library, and then over here in the Arduino libraries, if you come down, you can find the keyboard or you can find the mouse. And if you click on that, it just writes it right in there for you, just like that. So that's pretty handy. Now, the other benefit of having these two USB libraries included is that they're going to come with some example code. And I'm telling you, example code is the place to look when you're trying to learn a new library. So if you come up to File and you go to Examples, and you go down to USB, because these are USB libraries, you can see there's several examples for the keyboard. They've got a program that you can use that will like log you out of your computer by just pressing a button on your Arduino. They've got some message ones, one that kind of plays with the serial port. These are all fun to check out and very instructive on how to use these functions. Then they have a couple on the mouse. And then they also have one on the keyboard and the mouse combined. So this is where I went to learn about these functions that I'm now going to try to do my best to share with you. The other place to look for information about these two libraries is the Arduino reference webpage. So if you go to the Arduino website and you go to documentation and you go to reference, this takes you to what is my favorite page on the Arduino website, and it just shows all the different functions and structures and kind of variables that you can use with Arduino. And over on the right here, it's got the USB libraries, the keyboard and the mouse. And if you click on them, it comes and it starts telling you about a bunch of different stuff. So as just about every developer will tell you, the documentation is your friend. So this is, good stuff to check out and read up on if you want to learn some of those small details that you might not pick up on if you just try to implement the functions from the examples. All right, well, let's start with, we're going to work through all the functions in the keyboard library first. So let me write out some code and then we'll talk about it. Do you need a printed circuit board design software to move your prototype to the next level? Altium Designer is a great choice for designing PCBs, sharing your design with team members, and even getting your design manufactured. What really kind of blows me away about this software is that even though it's a super powerful tool, at the same time, it's really intuitive to use. They've got helpful video tutorials built right into the software so you can kickstart your learning process and actually get something made. Right now, you can get a free trial to Altium Designer with our link in the description. That's right, you can test drive this super powerful software with a free trial. Just check out the link in the description. All right, so I've got a bunch of code written here, and maybe I've got more than you might have expected. Right here are all the keyboard functions that we're going to talk about. Now, here's the first thing I want you to notice. Notice that I put all of the functions inside of an if statement. And I want you to see what I set up here. Basically, I created a button. I set it as pin 5. Then I set that button, which I'm calling enable button. I set it as an input. And then this if statement checks. It says digital read enable pin. So it's going to read the voltage, or it's going to read the state at pin 5. And if it's high, it returns a 1, which is also true. Or if it's low, it returns a 0, which is also false, right? So if the button is pressed, then we execute this code. If the button is not pressed, the loop is going to skip over this because the condition will be false. So this code only runs when this condition is true, and this condition is only true when I press a button. Now, I'm using a kit on a shield for Arduino. It's a circuit board that we sell. It happens to have a button that's wired up to pin 5. It's got a pull-down resistor on it, so it's normally low, and when I press the button, it goes high. So this is working out pretty well. Now you might ask, well, Mike, why do you have this construct here? Well, the reason I have this construct here is because there is a caution on the Arduino website in these libraries, both for the keyboard and the mouse, that talk about the fact that as soon as you start using the keyboard and the mouse libraries, they are immediately active. And so that is, as soon as you plug in your Arduino board, it is going to begin emulating a keyboard or a mouse. In this case, right, a keyboard. And that means it's going to start doing all these different commands that you have, that you might be wanting to do. And you can imagine your Arduino runs really fast, and it can emulate keyboard typing a lot faster than you can actually type. So if you plug in your Arduino board and then all of a sudden you've got your keyboard printing inside a tight loop, you're going to have, hundreds of lines of stuff being written in. So it's really important to make sure that these are all protected inside some type of construct like this, whether it be hardware or code or something like that. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Now you might be thinking but hey, Mike, look at these first two functions here. And let's talk about these first two functions, because I tell you what, they confused the crud out of me. And you would think it'd be pretty straightforward, right? Keyboard begin, keyboard end. And so you would think, right, if you took a statement here, say this one, for example, and you paste it in here, you might be led to think that when you have keyboard.begin, that is when these different keyboard functions could work. And when you have keyboard end, that is when it would shut off these different functions. And I'm sure that is the eventual intent of these. In fact, if you look at the documentation, that's pretty much exactly what it says these functions will do. But unfortunately, they are not implemented yet. So these functions do not work at all for the keyboard. So unfortunately, these functions are not implemented yet, and they don't work for the library. So if you go to the GitHub page for this library, the keyboard.cpp, and you come down to where they are blank. There's nothing there. So you can use begin and end all you want, but they're not going to do anything. The same is true for mouse begin and mouse end. These functions are not implemented yet, so they don't do anything at all, which is why you can pretty much don't worry about them. Don't have to worry about begin and end. I really do wish they worked, but they don't work. So now that you know that, maybe you won't, hopefully you're not going to be scratching your head as long as I was trying to figure out hey, why is this still doing it when I'm telling it to end? And why has it started when I haven't told it to begin yet? So, all right, that is begin and end. So we've got a couple more functions here, and these are all really straightforward. So let's just run through them here real quick. So this first one, let's actually check out these two right here, these print ones. All right, so what these do is wherever your cursor is at, it is going to type in this text. If you use the print line, it's going to type in that text, and then basically it's going to press enter and go to a new line. If you just use print, it's just going to type this text. So let me go ahead and upload this to my Arduino board. And then I'm going to put my cursor just right here. Okay, so again, it's wherever your cursor happens to be. It doesn't mean it has to be in the Arduino IDE, but here we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and press this button on my kit on a shield. Okay, and then you can see it printed, right? Now you'll notice it printed twice. Why did it print twice? Well, it prints twice because, again, the Arduino runs really fast, and I don't have any type of delay in here. So if I watch this, and if I just hold the button down, you'll see it just starts filling it up like really fast. For some reason, I love inserting text like that a lot. I just find that entertaining for whatever reason, but so it's not a bad idea to throw a little delay on the end of these things so that, you know, it's not doing it super fast. And you can press the button and release the button and it will kind of work. So now if I upload this and I just stick my mouse, and you know, just so you believe me here, let me open up another program. Here's just a word processing program. So here's my mouse right here, or my cursor. And now you can see it just inserts the text right there. And it only did it once, right? Because we got that delay. Okay, so that's how these work. That's pretty cool. Now let's talk about the next couple ones. All right, so the next couple ones are keyboard press, keyboard release, and keyboard release all. So, you know, on your keyboard, you've got more than just like numbers and letters, right? So if you want to like print out numbers and letters, you know, that's where you can use the print line and the print. But what if you want to do something like Control Alt Delete or like Control Z or something like that, right? Well, that's where you can actually use keywords to press specific keys or combinations of keys. So where do you find these? Well, it is in the documentation. So if you go over to the Arduino website, in the documentation here, or the reference rather, and you go to keyboard, and then it says it's got a link here for additional information on supported keys and their use. And then there's a whole list of the different keys on a traditional keyboard. So you got cap locks, the end button, home button, page up, page down, delete, insert, escape, left button, right arrow, like just all types of stuff, right? So, you know, I tell you what, let's go ahead and try the up arrow. So I'm going to put up arrow into here. Let me comment this other stuff out. And then I'll go ahead and upload this. And I'm going to actually comment all this stuff out. All right, so now I'm pressing, every time I press the button, I'm going to be pressing the up arrow. So let me go ahead and upload this. So now when I press this button, the cursor should go up. All right, now notice it went all the way up. I pressed it once, but it went all the way up. Now look at that. I'm down here and it's still going all the way up. What is with that? See, it's as if it's always being pressed. Like right now, remember, anytime you use the keyboard or the mouse libraries, the library is always running. Now you might be like, but Mike, look, didn't we call digital read enable button? Shouldn't that have stopped this? Like because you notice I'm not pressing the button anymore. Shouldn't this behavior have stopped when we're not pressing this? Well, you might be tempted to think so, but what happens is these keyboard presses, they latch. So when you say press, we're like literally still pressing the button. So we've said, hey, we want this function to happen. It happened. And when we exit it, it's still being held down. So in order to not have this down, we have to use this next function, this keyboard release. Now, here's what's entertaining. Look at, I'm going to try to delete this comment here. Do you see how it's like, it's fighting me? This is why it can get a little tricky to program in here. And you got to be like incremental in how you do it and careful in how you do it. As I was playing around with this library, I may have created a for loop that never exited and was like writing letters all over the Arduino IDE and moving the mouse. And I was struggling to be able to get the mouse up here to upload a different sketch because it takes over your mouse. Now you can always unplug the Arduino board, but if you want to try to reprogram the Arduino, it can be a little bit difficult. So for example, when I was playing around with these libraries, I got into a situation where I had the mouse going far over to the right of the screen and a bunch of like characters being printed, and I couldn't get my mouse to come up to go to tools and just upload like a blank sketch so I could reprogram the Leonardo board. It was really difficult. I mean, you can always unplug the Leonardo or, the Arduino from the computer and then you're fine. But the issue is trying to like reprogram it with something that's not screwed up essentially. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and upload the sketch again. And what that's going to do is now we haven't pressed this enable button yet. So this line of code has not been executed yet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go keyboard release. So keyboard press is going to press the up arrow key. But now what I'll do is I'm going to use keyboard release, and I am going to release the key up arrow. And I'm just, for good measure, I'll throw a delay in here. Let me upload this. Now when I have my mouse here and I press the button, see, I go up one, go up another, go up another. And again, it doesn't matter where you are. It's wherever your cursor is active. See, I'm pressing the button now and just on some random document, I'm going up. Could work in a web browser or wherever. Okay, so that is key press and key release. And then finally, we've got two more here. These are pretty straightforward. This last one here is keyboard release all. So let's say I wanted to do some keyboard combination where I wanted to press the command shift at the same time. Well, I would have two buttons, right, that I am pressing. So two buttons pressed, and instead of doing a keyboard release for each one of those, I could just do keyboard release all, and then it would just release any button that was previously pressed. So that's what release all does. I think that's pretty straightforward. So finally, we get to keyboard write. Now, keyboard write is a lot like keyboard print and keyboard print line, except that instead of printing like a string out like text, it is going to print in ASCII. So the number 65 happens to be a capital A. So if I comment these out and upload this, and I stick my cursor right here, when I press the button, notice a bazillion A's come out. And remember, a ton of them come out because we don't have any delay. And this if statement, for the length of time I'm pressing that button, we're getting all those A's. Let's just put a bunch of them in there just for fun. Yeah, see, that's cool. All right. Okay, so get rid of those A's. Let's go ahead and just take a quick look at the documentation for keyboard write. So I'm just in the reference again. I'm in functions, coming down to keyboard. Now I'm looking for keyboard write. And you can see just right here, this is kind of, this is what we're looking at. So it sends the ASCII value 65, it's going to print an A. If you put your single character in quotes, it'll print that, right? The ASCII of that. You can write it in hexadecimal if you want, or hey, you could even do it in binary. So that's how that works. So that's it with the keyboard library. Hopefully your gears are turning in your head on how you can use it. It's really pretty fun, especially if you find yourself having some repetitive task. So in the next video, we'll talk about using the mouse library. It's pretty similar. It's also pretty straightforward. There's a couple things in there you got to think about. Hopefully you found this really helpful. Before we go though, let me write out a quick program doing something that I found super useful. I don't know if you'll find it useful, but maybe it'll help you start thinking about how you can use these. So let me do that and then we'll talk about it. All right, so what I've done is I've written a program here that's going to help me do a task that I have to do over and over again. So recently I've started coding more in Python. I think it's a lot of fun. And so I've just been doing a bunch of little toy projects, playing around with it. And I do a thing called test-driven development where I write tests and I just try to make sure that my code is working appropriately. And one of the places I often run tests is in like a terminal window, right? Like a console shell or whatever. And so I'm constantly writing the words clear. So I'll write clear just to like clear the console, and then I'll press enter, or return rather, and then I just write Python and then the name of whatever file test I need to run just to see if my tests are passing, right? So I'll have like my editor up in one window, and then in another window I've got my terminal, and I'll make some changes to the code, run the test, see if it's working, that kind of thing. Anyway, it happens. I have to do it over and over and over again, and it's only a couple keystrokes, but it can get a little bit repetitive. So what I've done here is I've written a program using the keyboard library. I've got it hooked up to a button on my kit on a shield, just like we had before. I've got my if statement that's going to allow things to start and stop. So this stuff is only going to happen when I press my button. And then in here, I'm just using the keyboard print, the press, and the release commands 2 different times to write something and press enter, and then release the enter press. And then to write something, press return, and then release return. You know what? I think I'm going to throw a delay in here too. That's going to be important. In fact, I'm going to throw in a couple delays just so I can kind of see it happen. So I'm going to make it half a second here, half a second here, and then a full second there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and upload this. All right, so this is what should happen. So what should happen is it should type clear and press enter. So that's going to clear the terminal. And then it should type Python, should type that, and then press enter, and then it runs my tests, right? All right, so I've got my cursor right here. Hopefully this is going to work. I'm going to go ahead and press the button. Let's see what happens. All right, see how cool that is? So I press the button, it writes clear, enter, and then it writes that out, and then presses enter again. So now anytime I want to do this task, all I have to do is just press a button. Look at that. I've just automated something really useful. Like, obviously I'm going to be changing this file name, but geez, all I got to do is come into my, run Python test code, change a word. All I really need to do is change one line there. And then, especially if I'm going to be working on a file for a week or something, hey, this is going to save me a ton of clicks. Plus, it's a lot of fun. If you want to learn how to code real stuff, check out the Programming Electronics Academy membership program in the description below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to get updates when we drop new videos. Anyway, I hope you found that useful. In the next video, we'll jump into the mouse library, just like we have done here with the keyboard library. Look forward to seeing you then. Have a fantastic day.